Welcome everyone to this Wednesday or February 23rd, Friday website chat. It's great to see so many of you joining us. Please feel free to add your questions and comments and just greetings to each other in our chat. And let's see here. Everybody's a pro at this point, so please do update your name if you can do that in the Zoom controls. And we both have a Q&A if you want to add questions there or chat, but please make that chat zing with your questions and comments and greetings. We'd love to see that activity. We have a number of updates to work through today. And so Jennie, who has joined us, is going to give an update on the commission work session and budget and executive planning process. Rebecca is going to talk about the LSTA dashboard and give a demonstration. And then we have some notes about upcoming Federation meetings. And there's a ton of stuff upcoming and webinars and events and everything. So hold on. Here we go. And Jennie, I'm going to make sure that you have slide control too. All right, Jennie, you can control the slides from here on out and take it away.
Thank you. Well, before we get started, I just want to say I was a minute or so late because I just came off a panel discussion from a Master's of Library Science class with Simmons University. I have a connection to one of their professors there, and this was a panel about intellectual freedom with a couple of children's librarians, one from Michigan and one from New York, and then myself. And my goodness, just the positive energy. We're talking about a difficult, challenging issue and the challenges that our profession is facing, and to hear people who are dealing with these challenges and students who are coming into the profession thinking about these challenges in such positive ways, reinforcing our professional values and supporting one another. It was just so heartfelt. So I'm feeling really positive and upbeat coming into this website chat. So kicking things off, last Friday, we had a work session with the State Library Commission as we start to talk about the upcoming legislative session. And I put a link in the materials to the recordings from the work session so that you can have a chance to go back and look at it. It's a very, very long recording. I think our work session lasted a little over 6 hours. We're going to be chunking it up into different program areas so that if you're interested in a particular program area from the state library, like our GIS or government information programs, you can get more ready access to that soon. I really wanted to draw your attention to Kara and Amy's overviews of what we're thinking about in terms of resource sharing. We've been talking more and more about how we approach the commission and the legislature with an ask that more broadly supports resource sharing, including the shared catalog, including OCLC and the Courier and Montana Library to Go and other resources that we all share to provide access to information for our patrons. I included a link directly to that portion of the work session. I think it's a great tool for you to use as you start thinking about how you can talk to your boards and your community about the importance of resource sharing and the value of us coming together to leverage our resources to provide these kinds of services. What you can't quite see in the video, and I'm really disappointed, you can hear Kara's great description of the value of the Courier program, but she provided such a phenomenal visual of the cost of mailing 2 books through the U.S. Postal Service compared to the same cost for the number of books that you can share via 1 crate in the Courier. It had the commission applauding. So even though you can't quite see her doing that, take a listen to the presentation that they offered. It was absolutely fantastic. So let's start talking just a little bit more about where we're going with the information that was shared with the commission in the work session. As I said, our goal is to fund a component in statute that really isn't funded in any kind of meaningful way right now. This statute, 221328, the statewide interlibrary resource sharing statute, calls for the legislature to appropriate funds to support a statewide interlibrary resource sharing program. That funding really doesn't exist. We have a little bit of funding in the form of some general fund and some coal severance tax funds that we put towards some of these programs, a couple $100,000, but it's not directly appropriated by the legislature for those purposes. We, the state library, decide to put that funding to those purposes. And so there's an argument to be made that the legislature should fund this statute. We can describe it as an unfunded mandate. And I hope that that point will resonate as we move into the legislative process. So the work session on this past Friday, Kara and Amy and Marilyn Bennett were able to talk about what current services that we are providing under the umbrella of resource sharing and what it would look like if we were adequately funded to make sure that all libraries, as described in the statute, public libraries, public library districts, public schools, school districts, libraries operated by public companies, etc., tribal libraries, university libraries, all of us, that's all of us. I love that statute, that we really have the resources that we need to benefit from these programs. So I'm really excited to think about what that kind of legislative ask could look like. We will be presenting some ideas to the Network Advisory Council on March 11th and getting their input on what they think a legislative ask should look like. And then on March 22nd, we're going to be offering a webinar about the upcoming legislative session. I'm going to be co-leading that with Alyssa and Rachel from the MLA Government Affairs Committee. So I hope you can turn into that webinar. On April 17th, at the next commission meeting, the commission will be talking about our budget requests that will ultimately go to the governor's office. That meeting will occur at the MLA conference. So Wednesday at the start of the MLA conference, the commission will be meeting in Butte. I hope that you will plan to attend that commission meeting and offer your support and encouragement for a funding request going to the legislature. On April 18th, Kara and others are going to be leading a session at MLA where we'll be able to talk about this in even more detail and get more input on what we think this ask should look like. Our requests, the state library requests, are due to the governor on June 6th. So we will take the lead of the commission in sending those requests to the governor's office. And I sincerely hope that the commission will support a substantial resource sharing ask. We do know that there are other strategies that the Library Association could follow if that doesn't happen. And we'll be talking about what those strategies could look like on March 22nd. So this is a really important time in the work of the State Library, in the work of the State Library Commission and the library community as we start talking about the 2025 legislative session. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to turn things over to Rebecca.
Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Camp. I'm the Montana State Library Data Coordinator, and I'm going to post a link in the chat here about our LSTA dashboard. There we are. Montana State Library receives federal funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the Library Services and Technology Act, LSTA, Grants to State program. And this is the only federal program that's exclusively for libraries. Each state gets to determine how they spend those funds based on their own local priorities. And Montana has outlined, actually all the states have outlined their goals and objectives in a statutorily required 5-year plan. And 2022 closed out our 5-year plan for the 2018 to 2022 period. And so MSL state program report for the grant was just approved earlier this month. And the dashboard I created summarizes some of the funding and outcomes from our state program report and illustrates how our activities have been related to the goals that we set. I always like to take an opportunity to show you how to get to our dashboards page. So I'm going to share my screen. And we'll give that just a moment here. So you should be seeing the library website, mslmp.gov. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll find a tile for dashboards. And on the dashboards page, you can select the LSTA reports. All right, so our 2022 award was $1.2 million, and it was expended between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th, 2023. And you can see this colorful bar chart at the left, which demonstrates how our funds were distributed across our 5 goal areas, which are collaboration, adequate support, internet access, outreach and lifelong learning, and community leadership. We also have 4% allowed administrative costs. In this year's case, that administrative cost partially covered our rent for the state library facility, which provides office space for administering these grant-funded programs. And then at the bottom of the screen, you see a navy bar chart. And this shows how the 2022 award compares to other awards during the 5-year plan. And you can see that the funding is actually down a little bit from 2020 and 2021. But that's because both of those years saw an influx of COVID-related funds. First through the CARES Act and then through ARPA. IMLS uses a population-based formula that's set in federal law. And if you subtract out those COVID-related relief funds, we actually see a nice increase in 2022 compared to where we started in 2018. And that's because of the new population counts that came out with the 2020 decennial census. So before we continue through this dashboard, I want to point out that Montana State Library tracks program progress throughout the year, not just at the end of a grant period. And the way that you can look at that information is through our dashboards page that I showed you just a moment ago. It's also linked on this dashboard. It'll take you back to the dashboards page. And there's an additional link here to our quarterly financial where you can track how we spend out this award over the course of a year. The other link that you have up here is to our state profile on the IMLS webpage, and that looks like this. And the reason I linked that is we are required to do a 5-year evaluation for each of these plans, and that's conducted by an independent external agency. And you can read the full text of our 5-year evaluation by going out to our profile page. All right, so now let's continue on to the next page of our dashboard, and that's some information on how our expenses were broken out by project. We talked about our 5-year goals, and then next we have projects, and projects are those collection of activities that we complete to make progress towards the goals. And all the activities within a project share the same intent. So for example, we invested $367,000 in LSTA funds towards information access. And this project includes 4 different services. That's your Montana Shared Catalog, Montana Library to Go, Montana Courier Alliance, and the Resource Sharing Group, all of which have the same intent. We intend to improve users' ability to obtain and use information resources through improving library capacity and systems. It's also important to note that the LSTA Grants to State program requires the state library to contribute 34% of the funding towards these LSTA programs. each year in non-federal resources. And so what you see for that is a blend of state and local funds. And the participation in this way holds down your federal expenses, but it also makes sure that the programs we're offering hold local interest. They're things that you also want to invest in. And so I mentioned the Information Access Project. It has the highest amount of our LSTA expenses, but it also has the highest amount of match. So that's going to be your membership costs from participating libraries and activities like the Montana Shared Catalog and Montana Library to Go. And on this page, you can also see we have something that's called a match-only program. So that's a program that's funded through state dollars and not federal dollars. And that's related to our community leadership goal. It's your federation grants as well as our Network Advisory Council. And the next two pages of the dashboard provide highlights from this year's project. At the top left, what you see is how our projects are mapped to our goals. And this year, the state program report recognized 2 projects as exemplary. An exemplary project is one that's worthy of imitation, shows innovation and vision, and impacts the targeted audience. So those projects were the Continuing Education Project and the Information Access Project. Both of these had significant impact and improved library and information services for Montana patrons. As you walk through the dashboard, you'll see that each of the projects shows the amount of the LSTA award as well as the total investment. In some cases, like the Continuing Education Project, you'll see that the LSTA award and total investment are the same number. And what that means is that that particular project didn't have a local match. And you can compare that over here with the Information Access where there was a match. And for each of these projects, you're going to see some different data visualization. So for example, with our Continuing Education program, they were recognized as exemplary because of the accessible training options that were provided through the new MSL Learn platform. And you can see that we had 407 unique learners last year that claimed over 7,000 continuing education credits. And over on the information access side, the project was recognized for helping to tackle some of those geographic barrier challenges that we have in our state. I was really impressed by the volume of books that were shared and used through these resources. So over 4.7 million books. And if you think about that, that's enough books to be the equivalent of every single Montanan checking out 4 books from their local library. That's kind of an interesting way to think about it. And we also had an additional 1.3 million ebooks that circulated from our Anytime, Anywhere collection, Montana Library to Go. And through these collaborative services, Montanans could access the information they needed, no matter the size of their community. And if you look at this map on the right-hand side of our digital borrowers, you can see that ebooks were really checking out across the entire state. So whether you were in Glendive or you were in Missoula, you had access to those materials. And let's continue on to some more project highlights here. So I'm going to let you read over this one on your own when you go to check out the dashboard, but we had 5 additional projects this year, including consulting services, internet access, lifelong learning, Montana History Portal, and talking book services. And on our final page, we pulled out some of our favorite quotes regarding these different projects. All of them have some interesting accomplishments and achievements. So I hope you take the time to look at the projects later on. I think my favorite quote of all is back on that first page of the dashboard, because it talks about how these funds and the resources that we're providing with the funds have an impact on rural libraries in Montana. And the quote was, "As a small rural library, the ability to be part of a consortium increases my buying power, and the Montana State Library bargaining on my library's behalf is the most fiscally responsible way to get the biggest return for every dollar spent. I personally, as a taxpayer, appreciate all the state library does to stretch our funding." So as this quote highlights, LSTA grants to state combined with the local match dollars really maximizes the reach of these critical library programs. And through these collaborative services, Montanans can get access to information whenever and wherever they need it in the most efficient way possible, which is relevant to the information resource sharing that we were just talking about a moment ago. So I think that's just a really good quote and illustration of the impact of that service.
That's fantastic, Rebecca.
Thanks, Jenny. And if anybody has any questions or comments about that, please feel free to reach out to me.
I think this is it's such a great tool for us at the State Library when we talk about our work, whether it's with the commission or our federal funders or the legislature. I hope that this dashboard can be a really useful tool for you as well, because while we're investing these dollars through state contracts, they're really benefiting your libraries and your local patrons. And I hope that this tool gives you the information and the language to talk about these programs with your boards and with your patrons. So I hope you'll take some time to explore this really rich, data-rich tool that Rebecca has prepared. We'll just pause here and see if there's any questions and take just a quick break. The last thing that we wanted to mention during today's website chat are the upcoming Federation meetings. They're going to kick off here in just a couple of weeks, and I really look forward to seeing many of you at the meetings around the state. One of the things that we have been talking about now for really a couple of years is how we can make the federations more meaningful and the federation meetings themselves more valuable for everyone, including your board members and library directors. It was a recommendation from a study that we concluded last summer that we facilitate discussions on how we can go about achieving that goal. And so at each of the federation meetings, we're going to be having discussions about the role of board members, your board members at those federation meetings, as well as the role of the coordinator versus the board chair. There is Montana code that says that it is the members of your boards who create the boards of the federations, and that's largely because the federations are responsible for public dollars, and so it's your boards of trustees who have that governing authority, so they make up the governing boards for your federations. There's a lot of different practices across the federations in terms of who is responsible for organizing the content of the meetings and leading those meetings, and then facilitating the decisions and implementing the decisions of the federation. We're really interested in having conversations with each of the federations, understanding that the federations are all unique about what those roles are and how those roles are contributing to the value that people get from the federations themselves. So I wanted to give you that kind of heads up. Pam's going to be working with federation coordinators here as we go into the federation season to help facilitate those kinds of conversations with all of you. I hope that you'll really think about what we can do to make sure that the federations are meaningful for you, meaningful for our boards of trustees, that we're really getting the most from those opportunities to come together and share that time, share those learning opportunities, and share the resources that come through your federation. So looking forward to having those conversations. And again, state library staff will be facilitating those conversations at each of the individual Federation meetings. I think we've got the first Federation coming up in 3 weeks with the Broad Valleys Federation in mid-March. Pam, is there anything else you wanted to add about the upcoming Federation meetings?
No, I think you covered it really well. And I know there will be staff at each of these meetings to facilitate this discussion, which will be really great. I will be at Broad Valleys and everyone else will be at some of the other Federation meetings. So thank you.
Thanks. Any questions about Federation meetings?
I don't know if you guys noticed, but we did have a change to the agenda on the Broad Valleys Federation for Thursday. We have a presenter out of Bozeman, and I can't remember his name. Sorry, it's really hard to pronounce. Ara Margadushi or something like that. Anyway, so that will be a 2-hour discussion on leadership and like the relationship between boards and directors.
Sounds great, Lori. As you can see, we have a great lineup of upcoming webinars and events, and I know our staff do a great job of promoting those, so look forward to your participation in those upcoming events. Colette, anything you wanted to add about anything people should be paying attention to?
I think, we've sent out newsletters with some of these updated or added sessions. I do want to highlight next Friday, we're having a special noon session that will be conversation driven and sharing around the library safety and security issues that we're facing. We're really interested in hearing more about the needs and kind of creative solutions that our smaller, maybe 1 and 2 people libraries have. But looking forward to sharing some resources and having that facilitated discussion next week. We also, Jenny mentioned this earlier with the March 22nd, learning about libraries in the Montana legislature. That's a great partnership between the agency and the Montana Library Association. And I'm excited about that because there's so much to this legislative process that isn't transparent always to just kind of the lay person who, isn't necessarily on one of the committees or on the staff. And so it'll be recorded. So if you can't join us that day, don't worry about that part of it. But I think it's going to be a really eye-opening discussion and presentation to just see how you all can be involved, whether you're on a committee for MLA or not, but just kind of knowing how the sausage making works and having some ideas about that, I think is really interesting and powerful. But do look at the Aspen calendar to get those links and other information. Then we added a few things in April. We're going to lean into some of the MSL programs that I think are of high interest to patrons, and just teaching you how to teach patrons about how to get this information. Plus, a whole lot at the Montana Library Association annual conference. Hope to see most of you there in person. There is, in addition to the things that Jenny mentioned earlier with resource sharing, there is the Conversations with the Commission session also scheduled for Thursday afternoon, the 18th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. That will be another chance to follow up with the commission after their business meeting on the 17th. And also we're just busy adding things to the mix. We're also going to have a new series that kicks off with a session about connecting with local government officials. That initial webinar is going to be facilitated and hosted by Tracy Cook, and we're having a guest from Montana State University, an economist, Mr. Greg Gilpin or Dr. Gilpin, who's going to be joining us to talk about how to communicate and how to measure the value of public library services. So that's really cool. And then also, we're supporting the MSU Local Government Center. There are a couple of the workshops that are scheduled with Broad Valleys and with the Tamarack Federation. So either Dan Clark or Ashley Kent will be present at those meetings. And then we're also doing that workshop as a pre-conference on Wednesday the 17th at the MLA conference. And then we've scheduled regional meetings, not necessarily with the federations, but a regional meeting in Billings and Havre. And thanks so much for those of you who are encouraging your trustees to sign up. The registrations are starting to come in for those. So just, I think this is a year of learning and engaging so that we're really effective in both talking about what we do as libraries, but also being really solid about the role that each of us plays, whether it's directors and trustees, and then how we combine our collective effort and passion for libraries and public service together for that. So there is so much coming, and everything that is a webinar will be showing up in our YouTube channel. So never fear, you can always access the training and also be able to share it easily, hopefully, with those who aren't able to join the live sessions. But so Jennie, is there anything else that you wanted to?
Just fantastic. All great stuff.
Yeah, so exciting.
Spring is always a great time to reconnect with everyone. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of months.
Absolutely. We always kind of share our information and news sources, and all of and it's so great to see so many familiar faces and names in our participant list today. But you all know that you can always reach out to any of us if you have other questions. But with that too, are there, if you've had a little bit of time to process what we talked about, are there questions or thoughts that you would like to share with the group? Please feel free to just unmute and ask that question or put it into the chat as well. I always think I should have the Jeopardy music playing while we wait for questions and that.
I see Susie McIntyre. Susie, shout out to you. I read a great article about the event you held in your library, supporting the anti-hate community. Really glad to see the role that you're playing there.
Yeah, it was really great. And they read the United States Attorney for the District of Montana reached out to us because of the work that we had done. And and the fantastic thing is we now have a community engagement coordinator. So I did not put that together.
Nice.
We had staff and she did a great job.
Cool. Yeah. Huge kudos to you. Great team. All right, everyone. Have a fantastic Friday and a great weekend.